Hello and welcome to Unprofessional Engineering. My name is James.
And you got Luke.
Luke, we're tackling a write-in topic today. I started out by calling it open source electronics, but that seemed like fancy and vague for what I researched.
It seemed very vague.
Then I went with Raspberry Pi versus Arduino, but that felt a little too combative to me.
It
So
did.
now
It feels combative.
Yeah, I'm feeling more like a Raspberry Pi and Arduino 101 session. How about that?
Well, I wasn't prepared for any of that, so yeah, that's fine. That's cool.
Somewhere around there.
So James, if you had to say what open source electronics or hardware is, what would you say it is just off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, Luke, I would say that it is a software for which the original source code is made freely available and may be redistributed and modified according to the requirements of the user.
This is like Linux, right?
Yeah, I think Linux would be a good...
Linux is open source software, and like Arduinos and Pis are open source hardware.
That
use open source software.
Correct.
So it's a whole bunch of hackers and pirates out there like doing this stuff, right?
I think they prefer to be called makers now.
Makers? Sorry, makers. Is that what it is? People that used to be hackers are called makers now?
Hackers and pirates are now called makers.
Okay.
And they make a living hacking and pirating Arduinos and Raspberry Pis. Yes.
Continue.
So I started out by grabbing a definition for each of these from their respective web pages, right? So I went to Raspberry Pi's page and I went to the Arduino websites and I was reading them and they all sounded great, but I thought maybe that was a little too biased, right? So then I went over to digitaltrends.com and they have just an awesome conversation about the two. And it's like, are they rivals? Are they friends? Like, how do they get along? So I have a very long definition about what both of them are. But would you like to talk about that?
Yeah. So
no, not really.
No. I'll take it. So, so the one I want to talk about that I did a little more research on, because this one had a little kerfuffle, I think is the right word.
Ooh, if it isn't, it should be.
Yeah. So this is Arduino, and Arduino is an open source electronics platform that uses like super easy to use hardware and software. So basically
real modifiable too, which is interesting.
Super modifiable. Like you can do like all kinds of things with it. And on their website, they list like these really like super simple things that it does. It can turn a light on. It can turn a sensor on. It can scan a finger. And then it said something interesting, or it can send Twitter messages. And I'm like, what's going on here? So apparently, the Arduino devices, and they all kind of do the same thing. Arduino seems to be a little more, I'll say, expandable, like adding things to the Arduino.
Customizable, perhaps?
Yeah, customizable is probably the right word. But an interesting fun fact about the Arduino. So the Arduino, this thing started, where's the history? So this was somewhere in the early 2008. There were 5.
Early 2008?
Yeah, I feel so old when I say that. So it was 2008, and there were 5 co-founders of this Arduino platform. And they all agreed that this was going to be like for the betterment of society. I don't remember all the exact details because you know me, I just watch videos and that's kind of like my research. But apparently one of the cats registered the trademark in Italy and didn't tell the other 4. And this was all for plans to like do his own little side gig, his side hustle, and make this money unbeknownst of his other 4 co-founders. Nasty. Then when Arduino LLC tried to get registered in Italy, they were like, there already is an Arduino SLR or SRL. And it was like, what? And here there was this big, huge debate and battle between all these, founders and co-owners. And eventually, I think it ended up getting resolved. They ended up buying them. but I love whenever there's like that kind of history, like Raspberry, they're very like altruistic. They're all about like educating the children of the future.
Yeah.
Where, like Arduino, it was 5 guys who wanted to make a lot of money. It sounded like.
Man, that's why you don't go into business with your friends.
No joke, unless it's a podcast
Also,
that makes lots of money.
Also, yeah, don't go looking into Unprofessional Engineering LLC, Luke, because you will be very disappointed.
So that's a little bit of kind of the history of the Arduino, but there's really like I think there's about 4 or 5 reasons why they say Arduino is one of the better ones. So first of all, it's
what do you mean by one of the better ones?
Well, it
better than Raspberry Pi, or better than like some of the other things out there.
Well, so they had a section on their website called Why Arduino, and that's what I'm basically.
So the Arduino site says it's better than other things?
Well, of course. So number one, it's pretty inexpensive. And actually all of these are relatively inexpensive. I mean, these things cost roughly $50.
Yeah, some of them are even cheaper than that.
The cool thing about the Arduino, though, the Raspberry Pi, if I think I'm correct, only runs Linux. The Arduino can run Windows, Mac, and Linux operating systems. I'm pretty sure the Arduino only does the one with a penguin, which I think is Linux.
The one you just said that it can do all sorts of stuff.
Well, no, the Arduino can do all 3. The Raspberry Pi, can only do the one with a penguin, which is, I think, Linux.
I don't think so. So the Raspberry Pi, you can it's like a functional computer, right? And it uses SD
It needs
cards,
an operating system.
so you can put any operating system you want, I believe, on those SD
I thought
cards.
it was. I could be wrong. I'm sure someone will write in and tell me
That's
that I'm
true.
wrong.
Yell at us. Right?
So the programming environment, super easy to use. It's all open source. So basically, if you know C++, you can basically do any coding you want to do with this. And the hardware itself is pretty extensible. So the ability to, add memory and add different modules and, connect these boards together is actually really easy to do with Arduinos. So that's Arduinos.
That's Arduinos. All right. Yeah, I guess you're right. It does run on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, the Arduino stuff.
I told you.
Sometimes I just like to question you.
Sometimes you don't think I'm right.
Yeah,
most of
I never think that you're right. Correct. All right. So that's your breakdown of Arduino. Do you have an equally amazing breakdown of Raspberry Pi?
So Pi is basically the exact same thing. These things are pretty small. I actually have one.
Not even fair.
No.
You have one.
For like the people that might actually no, we don't do any videos anymore. But these things are small. I have one in my hand.
Like it's a credit card.
Yeah, it's about the size of a deck of cards, even in the overall height and everything. So Raspberry Pi started a little bit differently. So Raspberry Pi started out as a charity in the UK, and they were all about putting computers and devices and programming and all that into the hands of people. They really had a specific focus on like educating like younger kids, getting them into programming and development and building computers and those sorts of things. So their initial reasoning for starting was a lot different than Arduino.
At least one of the 5 guys.
At least one of the 5 guys. So I mean, right now, I mean, if you think about what the Raspberry Pi does, they're all about these makers, building all these different projects, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So if you have more details, feel free to share, but that's kind of what I got.
All right. Well, I'm going to share more details on both of them.
I know you have more details.
Before we do that, let's take a break for a word from our sponsor.
Hopefully it's Arduino, because it sounds like they like the monies.
I reached out and they did not get back to me, but we do have some shout outs.
It's about time. We haven't actually done one of these in a while. We should have a lot of shout outs.
In so long.
It's like been over a month.
Yeah. David C. Offered to sponsor an episode.
What?
And came up with the idea for this one.
Cash money?
Thank you to David C. And you're our unofficial sponsor for today's episode.
Not cash money, though.
It was, I think, if I remember correctly, I think it was a $5 cash money, which since I'm banned on Venmo, that makes it a little more difficult to make these things happen.
I gotcha.
Next, we have Nick E. from UA Little Rock. says that there's some crazy coincidence, which I'm thinking is a bit suspicious, going on between our episodes and what he's learning in college. FEA, CFD, transistors, plastics. Week after week, he's learning this at Arkansas, and we're covering these topics. Now, I know that you and I know nothing about college curriculums, so I think that the University of Arkansas is using unprofessional engineering to build out their curriculum.
Fact.
Nick, thank you for letting us know. Arkansas, wait for the lawsuit. And then last but not least, a shout out to our friend at CAD Noobs, Adam. Cool story right here. Adam was off in the Smoky Mountains hiking around doing those things that I don't do, but you know, some people
He should have called me.
I know, you would have been all about
now,
that.
Adam.
Adam was wearing his Unprofessional Engineering t-shirt because why would you not? It's perfect hiking material.
It is.
And when he was at like some observation deck or something like that, some creeper comes walking over to him and he's like, yo, I love Unprofessional Engineering. And I was like, I'm like blown away by this.
That has never even happened to me.
I know, that's what I said. I just hope someday somebody comes up to me on the street like, oh, you know, Unprofessional Engineering, I love that podcast. And then I'll be like, yeah, I'm James. Yeah. And they'll just not be impressed at all.
Not at all.
It was really a cool story to hear.
You're a relatively unimpressive person, so.
In every sense of the word.
So I have one other shout out. My boy Steve, the guy that helps us out with all of our car episodes, the guy that took his Audi engine out of his Audi and rebuilt it and put it back in his engine in his garage. He found a video of a guy making steak in a toaster and felt that our research for how to engineer the perfect steak was totally inconclusive.
Was missing since we didn't do a toaster.
The fact that we did not include the toaster way to make a steak. So
that's amazing.
Big shout out to my buddy Steve.
I love it. All right. So if any of you want a shout out, tell us how to cook a steak in a toaster, want some amazing stickers, or, you know, just want to say hi to one of us or both even, why don't you email us at unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com.
Make sure you subscribe, make sure that you like, make sure that you share. And as always, you can always yell at your smart device to play the Unprofessional Engineering Podcast.
I mean, maybe don't yell at it because, robots are going to rise up and then they're going to be mad at you for being so rude. So,
yes, they will.
Do you say thank you to your Alexa device?
No, but she asked she asked us a really bizarre question the other day. Like it was, if I remember it, I'll bring it back up again. But she asked a question, and all three of us were really like wigged out by the question.
Yeah,
it was bizarre.
They are creepy. Okay, so back to Raspberry Pis and Arduinos. I think you did them a disservice by saying they're basically the same thing.
I know I did them a disservice.
That's very rude. Raspberry Pi is like a mini computer. It's a fully functional computer.
Plug it in,
all
ready
the bits
to go.
and pieces of a PC. Well, maybe not quite that good, but it has like a dedicated processor. It has memory. It has a graphics driver. It has HDMI output. Audio output. I have one connected up to my computer, and it plays video games. So of course that's how it works. Oh, I have another one hooked up to my TV for the same reason. Anyways, it runs an optimized version of Linux, like you were saying. It doesn't offer built-in like onboard storage for use, but you can get micro SD cards to store whatever kind of operating system you choose on there. So I guess that's what you're saying, like Linux versus a different operating system. There's a whole bunch of different versions of them. I think there's like 6 of them out right now.
Yep.
But really there's about 2 different sizes. There's like a full size and a miniature. The 3rd generation is like $25 to $40, I believe. And then there's like a miniature Raspberry Pi Zero, which I didn't know existed, and it costs like $5. So they're really a low entry point, right?
They're latest and greatest, and it's getting a lot of poo-poo out there from kind of the maker community. It's the Raspberry Pi 400 personal computing kit.
Yeah.
It's essentially a keyboard. So instead of you needing to plug a keyboard in and killing one of your USB ports, it just built it into a keyboard. And apparently, so this thing costs about $100. and it essentially allows you to plug in a mouse and a monitor and do some basic computing stuff and programming, and it has the 40 pins just like all the other ones do. But apparently this one isn't nearly as compatible as the 4 or the Model B and some of the other ones that have been out for a couple years. So so keep your eyes peeled. If you're thinking about getting one, I was told that the 400 people should wait from a compatibility standpoint.
That makes sense. Isn't that how it always is with the new release?
Pretty much.
Right? One of the things I do like about them is that in some of the later versions, they have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth enabled. If you haven't, check out our episode on Bluetooth and how it works and where it gets its sweet name from. That's really the only thing I remember about that episode is the name. But that's very helpful, Wi-Fi. And if you're interested in knowing more about the differences, like the speeds and power and all of that stuff, just Google it and you're going to find a million different tables on that stuff. So then there's the Arduino. So Raspberry Pi, basically a functional computer. Boom. It's a pain because you have to carry around a keyboard. I get it. But otherwise, a computer. Arduino, on the other hand, I guess it was created by like Ivra Interaction Design Institute when it was first starting. Anyways, this is like, to me, this is the go-to thing in the maker community because it's so diverse. It's so easily able to be changed. But unlike the Raspberry Pi, where it's like a whole computer, the Arduino boards are a microcontroller, so not full-blown computers. They don't run an entire operating system like Linux on the Raspberry Pi, but they execute like simple code that's written for them. So really, you can learn coding to go along with this to make this little thing do basically whatever you want it to do. The Arduino integrated project environment is open source software, and it can be used by any of the Arduino boards running on Windows or Mac or Linux, whatever it is that you like to do. And then again, these kits run about 10 to 20 bucks. But then there's some really advanced kits for students and other learning that go up to like $200. The primary purpose of an Arduino board is to interface with sensors and devices. So it's great for hardware projects, making little robots, things of that sort. It's great for interfacing with other devices like actuators, where a full operating system would be like more than is needed for the project. Right, it'd be overkill for this. But the cheaper, more sensible option then would be the Arduino. So that's my two, like we'll say, differences there between them. I also do have like a Raspberry Pi versus Arduino topic. Do you think I should get into that now, or should we talk about something else?
Let's do that. And then I think after the rant, we could talk about some of the cool projects. And then I have a question that I was not able to find. And I'll just ask it now.
Okay, let's hear it.
So Raspberry Pi is listed as a, like the raspberrypi.org is a is listed as like a charitable foundation. And I'm
pretty sure about taxes.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything about how much money these companies make. Like I was looking for like number of employees and how much money they make. And I know there's this whole like open source community out there where, it's I could not find specifically, how much mony
like I didn't look.
The parent companies made, like Arduino.cc and Raspberry Pi .org. I could not find like how much cash they make. Like, is there money in doing this?
I don't know. I don't have the answer for you. But the cynic in me is going to say that a lot of these charitable organizations or nonprofits sure seem to be able to pay some people pretty well for what they do.
No joke.
So I'm guessing somebody's doing okay based off of these two things.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to bust out a couple quick versus things here before our rant. How about that?
Sounds good.
The first one that they listed out was how much power something uses. I think that's a complete waste of my time.
Yeah, it is.
Raspberry Pi uses more power. Boom. Okay. Raspberry Pi 3 has a built-in Ethernet port and wireless end connectivity, which is super awesome to me because I like things being convenient. Unfortunately, the Arduino devices don't usually have any built-in network connectivity directly out of the box, but because these things are so, I guess we'll say, easy to change, and configure, it is possible with a little bit of tinkering to get a wireless connection or an Ethernet port connected up to one of these. So that's pretty cool. And it's like a learning process too, right? And that's what this is all about. To back it up a little bit further, to add functionality to an Arduino, you either wire directly into the pins of the Arduino board, which sounds way over what I'm capable of doing.
That sounds terrible.
Or stack chips called shields on top of the base unit. And so there are like hundreds of these different shields out there, each designed to perform a different task. So you can interface with sensors this way, work with different Arduinos, work with control units, different things like that. So all of these shields make things really dynamic and able to be modified the way you want. The Raspberry Pi and Arduino devices have several interface ports. Connecting analog sensors with the Arduino devices is more straightforward though. The microcontroller can easily interrupt and respond to a wide range of sensor data, and really excellent for repetitive series of commands. Raspberry Pi boards, on the other hand, require software, which is, in my opinion, it was a total pain in the butt to set up. Like I had to connect my keyboard to it, then I had to connect it to a monitor or my television, then I had to do the coding right there like that. I thought that was too much work. I like the idea of kind of like adding these chips and shields onto things. The Arduino device could act as a control board that executes commands issued by the Raspberry Pi though. So I think that's kind of interesting. Now, before we get into when to use which and some of the other things that we have going on, like cool projects, let's take a break for this week's Luke's Rant.
So here's my rant. So I have the Raspberry Pi that our boss, your current boss, Troy, gave us as, I forget if these were Christmas gifts. I can't remember what they were, but they had games already.
I think they were birthday gifts.
Maybe
like
birthday gifts. I can't remember, but it sounds like you got two of them and I only have one. It sounds like.
I got a different one for a separate project that I was doing.
But this basically stole about a week of my life because it had all of the like old arcade games on here automatically on the little micro SD chip. And basically you plug this in with an HDMI to your TV. There's a little dongle that connects up to like an Xbox style remote control. I just wanted to say the word dongle.
I know.
And next thing you know, I'm playing like old school like video games. And so what I would suggest is someone with a compulsive personality like me. So this is more of like the more you know kind of thing, right? I need like the star going across.
Yeah.
if you have a compulsive personality and you would sit and play video games for like a week over Christmas and ignore your family, don't get one of these because that's exactly what you'll do. If you have a little more fortitude and you can actually prevent yourself from basically playing video games for 12 hours a day over Christmas break, then by all means get one and do that. So it's more of a PSA for everybody out there than it is a rant.
A little insight into Luke's world as well as a PSA. I love it. What would be your go-to, what you call old school game?
Metroid.
Oh,
hands down.
Metroid.
Hands down.
I think we talked about this in our video game episode.
Hands
if you haven't
down.
checked that one out, go do so. It was really interesting. I loved Metroid. That was my first game ever.
And it had to be the first one.
Yeah.
It couldn't be all the additional generations, but Metroid.
No. Metroid's a good one.
Man, was that good stuff.
Yeah, it was. All right. When to use which? So real quick, it's best to go with a Raspberry Pi if your project involves a task that would need a computer, kind of like we put out there already. Raspberry Pi specialize in making operations simple and easy to manage, regardless of like if you want to view media or connect to the internet, all that sort of stuff. Fun fact for you, Luke, the Raspberry Pi is 40 times faster than an Arduino when it comes to clock speed. Makes it sound even worse for the old Arduino is that the Raspberry Pi comes with 128,000 times more RAM than the Arduino does.
Wow.
Which makes me think like it's priced pretty reasonably.
No joke. The other thing too that's pretty cool is you kind of continue your like when to use one versus the other. Like if you go to raspberrypis.org's website, They just have all the accessories. Like if you want a high resolution camera, you can buy it off of them. If you want a low resolution camera, you want like a TV, antenna receptor, you want something else.
Which also makes me think somebody's making some money here.
Oh yeah. But it's still all pretty cheap stuff. I mean, it's not super expensive. So
the Pi sounds superior, but that's only when it comes to software applications. Arduino is the way to go for pure hardware projects that you might be working on. So what it really came down to in everything that I read was, well, why are you going to choose between the two of them? They're both super cheap and affordable, and they work really well together. Like the Raspberry Pi can be the brain behind it, and the Arduino can be all the limbs that are executing all of the work that goes along with it. So you know what? Once you get through that basic process of learning how to use the two, you can move into those more intermediate and advanced courses to make them work together.
Well, one of the things that I thought was that I never knew, and this was just my ignorance, which I have a lot of, was I was under the impression that these things were just like little computers, and they are. The Raspberry Pi's little computer. But then when you look at this computer, there's these like 40 little pins, right? You can, I'm showing them to James right now. No one else can see them. And I always wondered what they were for. I thought it was to like hook up another device. And so this is where you would use a Raspberry Pi to control other things. So this is where you can control lighting. You can control, anything else that needs an electronic pulse to turn it on or off, or some type of electricity to actually run that. You can actually use this to actually control things. And I guess I never realized that's what the pins are for. I was wondering why there were so many of them. So you can do all kinds of stuff, like, and we'll get into the projects here in a second, but like you could hook up cameras to this and have them turn on when like motion is detected, and like make your own home security system, all kinds of cool stuff with that. So
yeah, I love that. So Luke, you already mentioned my favorite Raspberry Pi project, and that
I stole it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you did steal it, and that's fine because I like you, so it's okay. That's just turning it into a video game emulator. Do I question the legality of that? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
But boy, is it amazing to have all NES, all Atari, Sega, Super Nintendo, all of these games all in one place.
And it's on a little chip like this big.
If you're like a super maker, if you're like our friends at, I think it's is it Geek Made Designs?
Yeah.
Where you can manufacture your own little pinball machine, not pinball, arcade machine, and use an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi in there as the brain running all these games. Man, that's sick. What are some of the projects that you saw out there?
So probably one of the coolest projects I saw was the one I had just mentioned. So you can actually rig up a camera that has a motion sensor on this. So rather than paying, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for, really high quality cameras for, your front door, your back door, your backyard, that sort of thing, you can actually buy these, 12.3 megapixel cameras for, $20 or $30 on the Raspberry Pi website. Hook them up to this. When it senses motion, it will record it. You can log into an IP address to view your own internal, security system. And it's just like, I kind of wish that I was a little bit more of a programming nerd and could get into that, because like I know how much those systems cost. I've looked into getting them, and if I could do that for like $100, it's just crazy to me.
Yeah, they're definitely very cool. I saw one that was, again, far too much for me to do because I'm not going to spend the time to do it. I like to think I would, but it was the Warren Home Automation Project, WARAN. It stands for something. I didn't write it down. Google it. It does everything, like watering your plants, knowing how much water they need in the soil, if they're dry or not, temperature control throughout the house, detects gas leaks in your house, all of these things being controlled from your phone. It's just crazy to me that these little cheap things could be affordable and do all of this stuff.
My next one is, and probably one of the coolest ones, and I mentioned at the beginning of the show, is a Twitter bot. So you can actually have this.
We should do this.
It'd be awesome to retweet all our stuff automatically. So you can create a little Twitter bot using a Raspberry Pi that every time, you tweet something with whatever the hashtag the program you wrote is looking for. It will go and it'll like it and share it and retweet it. You can turn these into FM radio receivers.
Yeah, that's cool. I saw someone make a jukebox out of it too, which would be cool.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff.
Another I saw was a solar tracker. So it had like live data feed coming in on a Raspberry Pi 2, I think. But it could figure out how much light was coming in, and it could track that and then like move accordingly and adjust solar panels based off of that, which is nutso to me.
Weather seems to be a big one.
It does.
One
that I like, Luke, this is the last one that I'll call out, is a digital wall calendar or a smart mirror.
I did see that one. That one was pretty cool.
I think they look kind of cool, but it makes me think like there's these, I think one's called the mirror or something. It's like these exercise program mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like all somebody did was take a Raspberry Pi, slap it on the back of a mirror, and like do this stuff. And now they're just selling them for like thousands and thousands of dollars with some like pre-programmed exercise programs on it. It's crazy to me.
I could see that happening.
Yeah. But all sorts of cool stuff going on. Any other projects you wanted to give a shout out to?
The only other one that I saw was wireless print servers. And then where is it? A network monitoring tool. So they have this thing, it's called a Pihole. And what it does is you can set up this, and just look it up. It's called Pihole. And I just watched a video about how they do it. And what you do is you create a program that blocks all of your ads on your entire network. So like if you're, online and whatever you're seeing, you can set up this Pihole and all those things. And I guess they called it that. It all goes into this hole and you never see any of the ads. So
that's pretty cool. I'm okay with that. So I did want to cover one more topic real quickly.
Shoot.
And that's the best, or at least some learning resources out there for you. Of course, if you hit up arduino.cc or raspberrypi.org, they have a bunch of learning resources on their web pages. If you're more of a book person, which I know Luke and I are not because we can barely read, there's Raspberry Pi Cookbook, Software and Hardware Problems and Solutions by Simon Monk, as well as Programming the Raspberry Pi, Getting Started with Python, which is important, also by Simon Monk. So you might want to check out those books. On opensource.com, you can find a bunch of different projects for Raspberry Pi, like how-tos, getting started guides, things like that. Coursera, Coursera, it looks like it has tons of Arduino projects ranging from beginner and intermediate, and then maybe a few advanced ones that you can hop on there and look at. And then if you go to udemy.com, you can pay like 10 to 20 bucks for a course to learn anything about these things. They look like they're all highly reviewed. And if you're more like me, if you're a video or blog kind of guy, head over to Instructables or hackaday.io. They have tons of projects that will handhold you through it, or just YouTube some stuff like I did. Sentdex, Sentdex, was big for Raspberry Pi tutorials, hundreds of thousands of views.
Tons of stuff on GitHub too, if you're looking for places for people that have actually written some of this stuff. GitHub, and that's another one of those kind of open source community locations where people put all their stuff out there. So check it out.
Luke, before we wrap this up, one last question for you. Have you ever had a Raspberry Pi to eat? And is that even a thing that people make?
I've had blackberry, blueberry, strawberry. I don't think I've ever had a raspberry.
Me neither.
Wow, that's deep.
Yeah, so think about that, people. While you're programming your Arduinos to work with your Raspberry Pis, think about if you've ever eaten one. Hopefully you've learned something here. I know we're a bit all over the place, and man, these things are way over my head, but I know I learned something during the research. Again, if you want to suggest any topics, just tell us hi or say what a great job we did. Email us at unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com. And until next time.
See ya.